In the winter of 1973, a propane shortage hit large parts of rural America so hard that families in Ohio and Pennsylvania were sleeping in coats inside their own homes. Fuel deliveries stopped. Heating oil prices doubled. Schools shut down for days at a time because buildings could not stay warm. But something strange happened in Amish communities across Holmes County. Most families barely noticed, not because they were wealthy, not because they had generators, and not because they had giant stockpiles of fuel hidden somewhere. It was because many of their homes were still using a heating method that cost almost nothing to operate and required no connection to a utility company at all. A method so simple that the main material cost for the active heating part was under $5. $5. That number bothered me enough that I drove out there to see one of these systems myself. The house belonged to an Amish carpenter named Eli. It was a two-story farmhouse built in 1911. There was no central furnace, no ductwork, and no thermostat mounted on the wall. Outside temperature that morning was 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside the kitchen, it was 71 degrees Fahrenheit. It was not just warm near the stove, it was warm everywhere, upstairs included. When I asked Eli how much wood he burned in an average winter, he looked at me like the question itself was strange. He said about 2 cords. The average American wood stove household burns between 4 and 7 cords. His house used less. That was the moment I realized I was not looking at a stove. I was looking at a system, and the $5 secret was not the heater itself, it was the seal. Now, I need you to stay with me because this is where the story changes completely. Most heat loss in American homes does not happen because furnaces are weak. It happens because houses leak. The Department of Energy estimates that typical American homes lose 25 to 40% of their heat through uncontrolled air leakage. Tiny gaps around windows, doors, floorboards, attics, foundation joints. You are not heating your house. You are heating the outdoors. And for most of human history, builders understood that perfectly. Before modern insulation existed, survival depended on controlling drafts, which is why old Amish homes used techniques modern construction almost completely abandoned after the 1950s. Lime wash and clay ceiling, not spray foam, not synthetic membranes, not expensive insulation systems. Clay, sand, lime, and in many cases, linseed oil. Materials so cheap, the total yearly maintenance cost was often $5. Here is how it worked. Every autumn, Amish families would inspect the interior wall seams, floor edges, window frames, and attic transitions. Any tiny crack where moving air could enter was sealed with a simple clay and lime mixture, sometimes reinforced with straw fibers or oil. The goal was not just insulation. It was AIR control. And air movement is what actually steals heat. Now, think about modern heating for a second. You can have the most expensive furnace in America, but if cold air keeps entering and warm air keeps escaping, the system runs constantly trying to replace what the house is losing. That means higher fuel use, higher wear, higher bills. The Amish approached the problem differently. Instead of producing more heat, they stopped losing it. And here is the number that changed everything for me. A draft opening only 1/8 of an inch wide around a standard door frame can leak as much air over a winter as leaving a small window partially open 24 hours a day. One tiny gap, 1. Multiply that across an entire house, and suddenly your heating system is fighting a battle it can never win efficiently. Now here is where big gas enters the story. Because after World War II, home heating transformed into one of the largest utility industries in America. Natural gas expansion exploded during the 1950s and the 1960s. Millions of homes were connected to centralized heating infrastructure for the first time. And at the same exact moment, building methods changed. Fast construction replaced tight construction. Developers needed speed, cheap labor, mass production. Draft sealing became secondary because fuel was cheap and furnaces compensated for inefficiency. Instead of building homes that held heat naturally, the industry normalized homes that leaked heat continuously and simply burned more fuel to compensate. That model became incredibly profitable because every inefficient house guaranteed recurring energy consumption forever. Now, I want to be very clear here. Modern insulation absolutely matters. This is not an anti-insulation argument, but insulation without air sealing is like wearing a thick winter coat unzipped in a snowstorm. The heat still escapes. And the Amish understood something modern builders often forgot. Moving air carries heat away faster than almost anything else. Now, let's talk about lime specifically, because this material has been quietly protecting buildings for thousands of years. Roman structures used lime plasters, so durable they still survive today. Old European farmhouses used lime because it remained flexible. Modern drywall compounds crack rigidly over time. Lime flexes slightly with seasonal expansion and contraction, which means small gaps stay sealed longer. It also naturally resists mold and regulates moisture. Not magic. Chemistry. Lime absorbs and releases humidity slowly, helping stabilize indoor air conditions. And clay does something equally important. It stores heat, thermal mass. A clay-coated wall absorbs warmth during the day and releases it slowly over hours. Not enough to heat a house by itself, but enough to stabilize temperatures dramatically. That stability reduces heating demand. Now here is the part nobody tells you. Many old Amish homes are not especially well insulated by modern standards. Some would fail modern efficiency tests on paper, yet they remain remarkably cheap to heat. Why? Because controlled AIR movement often matters more than raw insulation thickness. A perfectly sealed, modestly insulated house can outperform a heavily insulated, leaky one. That statement has been repeatedly confirmed in building science research. Now let me tell you about a study almost nobody talks about anymore. In 1978, during the energy crisis years, researchers at Princeton Center for Environmental Studies tested traditional draft sealing methods in older northeastern homes. Not high-tech retrofits, simple sealing strategies. Clay fillers, lime coatings, weather sealing around foundations, and attic transitions. The average heating reduction across the test homes was between 30 and 42%, and the cost of materials in several homes was under $10. The study exists, the numbers are real, but the methods never became mainstream because the market moved toward mechanical solutions instead, bigger furnaces, more fuel consumption, more equipment. Now here's something even stranger. The Amish method works best when combined with another old technique modern homes almost completely abandoned: interior zoning. Instead of trying to keep every square foot of a house at exactly the same temperature, traditional homes concentrated heat where people actually lived. Kitchens, main rooms, sleeping spaces. Unused rooms stayed cooler. Doors remained closed. Heavy curtains separated thermal zones. Again, not deprivation, efficiency. The average modern American home heats enormous amounts of unused space constantly. Hallways, guest rooms, storage areas. The Amish treated heat as something valuable to be managed carefully, not blasted everywhere indiscriminately. And that mindset changes everything. Now let's come back to the $5 number, because I know someone listening right now thinks this sounds exaggerated, but here's what that number actually represents. A bucket of lime, some clay soil, maybe linseed oil, basic weather stripping, simple yearly maintenance. That's it. That's it. Not a product subscription, not a financed heating system, not a service contract. A maintenance ritual repeated every autumn that dramatically reduced heat loss before winter even started. The system wasn't glamorous. That's probably why modern culture ignored it. No shiny technology, no app, no complicated equipment, just careful control of air. And once you understand that, the economics of modern heating start looking very different. Because if homes naturally retained heat far more efficiently, fuel demand drops a lot. Now, before I show you the one Amish technique modern building inspectors almost never discuss anymore, I need to tell you what happened in building codes after 1965. Because this is where simple, low-cost heating methods quietly disappeared from mainstream construction almost all at once. And once you see how that happened, the entire industry starts making a lot more sense. Drop a comment below and tell me this. What is the coldest room in your house during winter? Because chances are the problem is not your heater. It's the AIR movement nobody ever taught you to look for. By the late 1960s, something had changed in American home construction. Older homes had problems, absolutely, but they were built by people who expected fuel to be expensive and difficult to obtain. Newer homes were built during an age when utilities promised endless, cheap energy forever. And that assumption changed the philosophy of construction itself. Heating systems became larger, homes became leakier, and instead of building houses that naturally held warmth, the industry normalized houses that depended entirely on continuous fuel consumption. That dependence became permanent revenue. Now, let me show you the upstairs system Eli used, because this is the part I could barely believe until I saw it. Above the masonry heater in his kitchen was a narrow vertical chamber built directly into the center wall of the house. Not a chimney, a heat channel. As the masonry heater absorbed and radiated warmth, some of that warm air naturally rose through the central channel into the upstairs rooms. No blower motor, no ducts, no electricity, just convection. Warm air rises, cool air sinks. That is the entire mechanism. The upstairs doors had small gaps intentionally left beneath them, so cooler, dense air could slowly fall back downstairs, while warmer air replaced it through the upper transfer vents. The house circulated heat naturally. And this is where modern homes accidentally became less efficient. Modern design, in this case, worked against keeping heat inside. Open floor plans, gigantic vaulted ceilings, large open stairwells, all beautiful visually, and all terrible for heat retention. Hot air rises into unused ceiling space, while living areas remain cooler. The Amish built lower ceilings, compartmentalized rooms, and controlled air pathways because every bit of escaped heat represented labor spent cutting wood. Their homes were designed around thermal logic, not aesthetics. Now, here is the document that surprised me most. In 1949, the USDA published a Rural Housing Efficiency Bulletin that discussed low-cost, passive heat circulation systems in farmhouses across Pennsylvania and Ohio. Buried inside that report was a sentence that almost nobody remembers now. It said that proper interior air separation and controlled convection pathways may reduce fuel requirements more effectively than increasing furnace output. Read that again carefully. Reducing heat loss mattered more than producing more heat. By the 1970s, the industry had moved completely the other direction. Centralized forced air systems became standard. Bigger furnaces solved problems poor building design created in the first place. And the companies selling fuel had absolutely no incentive to reverse that trend, because a tightly sealed, low-consumption house is bad for business. Now think about the economics for a second. A family burning 2 cords of wood a winter instead of 6 cords. A household cutting gas demand by 40%. A home retaining warmth naturally for hours after heating stops. Every one of those things reduces recurring utility revenue. And recurring revenue is what modern energy systems are built around. That does not mean there is a conspiracy hidden in a dark room somewhere. It means industries naturally optimize toward models that maximize long-term consumption. The Amish optimized toward independence instead. That is the difference. And the craziest part is how little it actually costs. You can still buy hydrated lime for under $10 a bag. Clay soil is literally under your feet in many parts of America. Basic weather sealing materials cost less than one restaurant dinner. A weekend spent finding and sealing air leaks can reduce heating demand more than upgrading an expensive furnace in some homes. The physics has not changed. Only the culture around heating changed. Eli told me something before I left his farmhouse that I have not stopped thinking about since. He said, "Most people think warmth comes from making more heat. Real warmth comes from keeping the heat you already made." That sentence explains the entire system, not bigger heaters, not more fuel, retention, control, stability. And once you understand that, you start seeing your house differently. You stop asking, "How do I produce more heat?" And you start asking, "Where is my heat escaping right now?" That is the question the Amish solved generations ago, and it is the question modern heating companies quietly hope you never ask. If you made it this far, drop your average winter heating bill in the comments. I read every one. And next time, I'm going to show you the Amish window design that keeps rooms warmer without triple pane glass, electric coatings, or modern insulation. A design so effective that early energy researchers called it the forgotten thermal wall.